This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. And Parshat Kedoshim is found on page 656 in our Stone Chumashim. And for those in it is Vayikra, of course, Perek Yud Tet, chapter 19, from the very beginning. And right over here, we have almost the culmination and the fulfillment, the realization of a debate that took place between Moshe and Paro. Right? Moshe was asking initially, let us go out for 3 days that we can serve our God. And Paro, of course, was not all that amenable towards it. Paro, at a certain point, is finally willing to allow some of them to go. Just 1 second, let me find it. I'm sorry I didn't find it beforehand. Paro is finally willing to go, and he says, Mi vami haholchim. Right? There we go. Page 342, Parshat Bo. This is already towards the end of the plagues. After the 8th plague, Paro has almost had enough. Perek Yud, page 340, 341, Perek Yud in Shemot, Pasuk Chet. Moshe, well, in Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, his servants say to him, enough's enough. Send these people out. Let them serve Hashem, their God. Don't you realize Egypt is being lost, destroyed? By Yushav, they bring back Moshe and Aaron el Paro, and he says to them, L'chu, go, Ivdu et Hashem, go serve Hashem Elokechem, your God. Mi v'mi ha'olchim. Who is going to go? Moshe answered, Pasuk Tet, page 342, Bin Arenu, Uviz Kainenu, with our young and with our old we will go, Nelech. Bivanenu, Ubivnotenu, with our sons and with our daughters. Bitsonenu, Uvivkarenu, with our sheep, with our flock, we will go. Paro responds in verse 11, Lochein, no, not like that. L'chu na hagvarim. Interesting, he puts in the word na. Na means please, right? Paro is saying, like, just give me something here. Let me show that I'm still in control a little bit. Give me some semblance of authority here. L'chu na hagvarim, let the men go and serve God. Ki ota atem mivakshim. Because that is what mivakshim, that is what you are seeking. That is what you've been asking for. And they're chased out. So we see that there is this argument, this fundamental difference between Moshe and Paro as to what does it mean to serve God? How does a nation serve their God? Paro understood, you've been asking to serve God. What is implicit in that request? What does it mean when a people serve God? What does that mean? Hagvarim, adult males. That is what it means. That's what you've been asking for. Not that Moshe ever asked, let the men go, but Moshe was asking, let us go serve God. What does serving God mean? Adult males, that's what serving God means. That's how a people, a nation, a religion, that's how they serve their God. Adult males. Whereas Moshe said, no, that's not how we work. How do we go? Binarenu uvizkanenu, bivanenu ubivnotenu, with our young, with our old, with our sons, with our daughters. Everyone is involved. And when I first took the position here, so friends back east, as they say, I would say, so what type of shul do you have? I'd say I have a Klal Yisroel type of shul, right? Old, young, middle age, right? I've got everyone. That's what we are. A very, very beautiful mix of all. And that's how we are meant to be represented. That's how we are meant to participate. So that was this fundamental difference between the Jewish view presented by Moshe on how does a people, how does a nation, how does a religion serve God, and the Paro view. So now we begin Kedoshim, page 656. By Daber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Speak to kol adat b'nei Yisrael, the entire congregation of the children of Israel. Every single person is included in this charge, in this mission. V'amarta aleihem, you shall say to them, Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. Why? Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, because I, Hashem, your God, I am holy, and therefore you should be holy. Okay, right? Now, if I would tell my children, I want you all to be rabbis, because I'm a rabbi. I want you all to be good basketball players, good tennis players, because I'm a good basketball player. I'm a good tennis player. Very good. That's me. Because God is holy, how does that translate into this charge that we must be holy? Of course, God is holy. God is the epitome of holiness. God is all Kedusha, all the time. How does that translate to us? Why? How do we understand that since God is holy, we also must be Kedoshim, we must be holy? What do you say, my friends?
Giving us the example and
Okay.
how to be.
Okay, good. God leads by example, good. And a good parent, right, might not say, I've got blue eyes, you have blue eyes, right? I've chosen this profession, you chose that profession. I'm good in this sport, you be good in this sport. That a good parent can't do. But a good parent can say, I've made responsible decisions in life. I want you to make responsible decisions, right? Things that they can emulate, right? I've been a caring person. I want to see that you grow up to be caring people, right? Yes, God is Kadosh, and we too must be Kadosh. Okay, we'll need to define Kadosh soon. But any other ideas on this first? Cheryl, yes?
That was the purpose for our being created in the first place.
Okay.
So,
Meaning what? What was the purpose? You're going
purpose
back to your Derech Hashem. I like it.
yeah, our purpose is to be following what Hashem tells us to do. And this
Okay.
is this is it. I'm sorry, I'm not being more articulate, but
This
wants
is
us
the summary of all that we're meant to do is to become Kadosh, to become godly.
yes,
Okay.
that's our mission.
Right? We're sent to this earth with a mission and a certain period of time that we're given that none of us know exactly how long that is. We hope it will be long and fruitful, but none of us know. And that mission is during the time that you are right? We say, as long as that neshama is inside of me, I've got to utilize my time and make myself more godly, lift myself up to become more kadosh. Good, good. Anyone else wanted to say something?
Rabbi, this is Esther.
Yes,
We
Esther.
we become what we're around, and so it seems like with Hashem saying you're going to be holy because I'm holy. In other words, you're going to spend time with me, and as a result of that, you will become like what I am. That's why you're supposed to be
Okay.
careful who you spend your time with.
Okay. So it's a charge, as you're saying, Esther. Make sure that you put yourself into those situations, that environment, and those influences that will help lift you up, and not those that will bring you down. So it's a charge in terms of the environment that we place ourselves into. Nice. Kathy, you about to say something?
Well, we're his representatives here on this planet, and we need to represent a holy God. I mean, our job is to connect to him. We connect through the mitzvot, which makes us holy and sanctifies us, and we show the world that.
Okay, that's great. In other words, really the mission of Judaism is, it's interesting. Going back to Shemot for a minute, we were called B'ni B'chori Yisrael, my son, my firstborn, Israel. So when you think about it, Israel was not the first nation. We were not the first nation. We actually became a nation, right, through the whole Mitzrayim experience. Until then, we were individuals, but there were existing nations. So why are we called Bechori, the firstborn, when in terms of chronological order, we're not the firstborn? Rabbi David Foreman says very beautifully, what is the job of a Bechor, of a firstborn? A Bechor's job is to take the values of the parents and to translate that as how that works in the next generation. Because no two generations are the same. And, I look at my father's generation. My father, Alav Shalom, grew up in he was born in the 1920, grew up in the 30s, the 40s. It was a very different world than me being born in the 1960s, growing up in the 60s and 70s. And my kids, right, born in the 80s and 90s, growing up, very, very different world. So the job of a Bechor is to take what the parents are all about and show the next siblings how that works in the next generation, to take that of the parents and show how it plays out. In that respect, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, Bechor, meaning we're supposed to show how we take the godliness and make it livable in this world. How we live godliness in the world that we are in. And in that respect, that is how we are the Bechor. We're taking that of the parent and translating it into a manner that is applicable, that can be lived in the world as we know it. So that's, I believe, what you're saying, right? So Kathy, as Kathy's saying, so our responsibility is to exude godliness, to show how a godly people, how a godly individual and a godly people are meant to act, to deal with others. Beautiful. Cheryl, you want to say something before?
Yeah, it reminds me of Ethics of Our Fathers, where Moshe handed over the Torah to Yehoshua, who handed it to the elders, who handed it to the prophets, and then who handed it to the great assembly.
Yeah.
And then that's how
each one having to make it adjust into that next stage. Beautiful. And I would just add one other idea, and then I'll double back to what Kathy had said. We have what is called a chelek Eloka mima'al. We carry inside of us a part of God from above, and that is our nishama. It's fascinating the way the Nefesh HaChaim explains it. We have different terms for soul. What are some of the terms that we have for soul? Nishama, we mentioned. Nefesh, Ruach, right? These are all, right? Vayipach ba'apav, Ruach, that God blew into their nostrils, this living spirit, right? We have different terms for soul. And the Nefesh HaChaim explains it that he gives the parable of a glass blower. What does a glass blower do? First he inhales, then he blows it out, and then the air comes and rests within that glass enclosure now that has been blown. I remember as a kid, we used to take a trip up to Corning, New York, I think it was. Corning, New York. Any other East Coasters over here? Corning, New York. And that's where they had this glass factory, Corningware. We're all familiar with the company. So I think it comes from Corning, New York. I remember going back many, many years now. And it was fascinating watching glass being blown. So he says that's the same idea. You take a breath in. That's called, in Hebrew, nishima. And then you blow it out. What's that? Ruach. And then it rests. Shabbat vayinafash. And then it rests. That is our soul. It is the neshima, so to speak, of God, the breath of God. Then it is blown out, so to speak. That's the ruach. And then it rests inside of us. So when I inhale, that becomes a part of me. When I exhale, that part of me has now gone into wherever it has gone. And that is, as Reb Chaim of Volozhin explains, that is the Ruach Eloka Mima'al, the Chelek Eloka Mima'al, that part of God that is in us. So it's not God saying, I'm this, you be this, but it's saying, I am a part of you. And make sure that you, the you, reflects what you truly are, which is containing a part. That is what we must recognize, that we have a chelek Eloka mima'al. And every human being has a chelek Eloka mima'al. Okay, so what is this Kedoshim? What does it mean to be holy? So Rashi understands it that we should prushim mina arayot umina aveira. Rashi says that holiness comes about when one keeps oneself away from prohibited sexuality, either sexual relations, whatever it is, that when it comes to our more intimate life, that is where we show our holiness. Ramban takes a broader view, and he speaks about the concept of what he calls a menuval birshut haTorah. A menuval is a lowlife. Menuval is a lowlife, birshut haTorah, who stays within the boundaries of the Torah. And he explains that a person can feasibly observe the mitzvot, basically stay within the confines of the mitzvot, but be a rotten, low-life person, meaning not taking all that which the mitzvot are meant to do, which is meant to connect us to God, connect us to the eternity, to lift us up, to make us better, more spiritual people. As we'll see in this Parsha, but the famous story that a convert, I believe it was a convert, potential convert, came to Hillel and asked for Hillel to teach him the entire Torah while standing on one foot. Initially, he approached Shammai, who viewed that as an act of tremendous disrespect and disregard for Torah and Torah scholarship. Right? Imagine going to the top brain surgeon in the world and saying, please teach me neurology as I'm standing on one foot. Right? That's an insult to the decades of study and practice that this person has put into their field. So Shammai chased him away. Hillel had a different understanding of this person. Hillel understood that this person was coming from a good place, but was feeling somewhat overwhelmed. He wanted to enter into the realm of Judaism, but 613 mitzvot, like, whoa. How do you wrap your head around that? And he was asking for regel achat, one leg, meaning what? One foundation. What is the one foundation of the entire Torah? I know it'll take a lifetime to even scratch the surface through my studies. But I want to know, what is that one pillar, that one foundation that it is all built upon? And Hillel, based on the pasuk that will come to soon in our Parsha, of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself, gave him what's been known to be called the golden rule, right? What you don't want done to you, don't do to others, right? Everything else is a perush. Everything else is an explanation of that. Lech, go, gemor, start your studies. But everything else flows from that. What you don't want done to you, don't do to others. Lift yourself up. The way you treat others, the way you treat yourself, the way you treat everything should be in a proper, exalted manner. The way that you live needs to reflect every aspect. So even though there might not be any halachot about greeting someone with a smile when you're walking there, but we're told that, I think it was Rabbi Yochanan, that no one ever initiated the greeting to him. He was always the first to initiate the greeting, whether it was to every human being, Jewish, non-Jewish, did not make a difference. So Ramban says that the concern of this mitzvah of Hashem in giving this mitzvah is, don't just check the boxes and I did this mitzvah, I did that mitzvah, I did that mitzvah, I did, yes, check off the boxes. Make sure that it permeates who and what you are. Make sure that you become an exalted person. And all these mitzvot need to reflect on everything that you do. Don't be this menuval birshut haTorah. And I've told the story before, I believe, to this group of a person, a young man who was converting, and he was in charge of a bunch of other people at work, and one of the guys under him wasn't doing a good job, and he tore this person to pieces, and he came to me all upset, and he said, Rabbi Ciner, what am I doing over here? I'm learning all these halachot, this, that, but then I treated this guy in such a manner. Right? What good is all that I'm learning? And I said, you're right. You're right. You're missing the boat, my friend. I said, yes, we have all these minutiae, all these halachot, but it's all meant to give us this sense of, I'm living in God's world, surrounded by God's children. And we go into a store and we check to see the food is kosher certified, right? Because it's a recognition, I'm living in God's world, and therefore it's not a free-for-all. I follow the house rules. All the mitzvahs we have are meant to bring about this sense of Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. I'm always in the presence of God. I'm placing God before me always. I always feel I'm in the presence of God. And that then needs to reflect on how you treat this person under you. If he's not doing a good job, fair enough. You as the boss need to get things to improve, but how do you do it? How do you treat him? Right? Does he walk away feeling like a piece of dirt, or does he walk away feeling that he's ready now to take on the responsibilities in the way that he's supposed to? Everything's supposed to be Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I place God before me always. Those are the words we have written right above the Aron Kodesh, right above the ark here at Beth Jacob. And that is what it's all about. And therefore, Ramban says, Kedoshim to you. Don't think that you're just going to check off the boxes of the different mitzvot that you're going to do. No, that is not enough. Kedoshim to you. Make sure that it spills over into all of your dealings, all the things that go on with you in life. Beautiful. And Kedoshim to you, very, very, very classic, in a very classic way, right? For us, holiness is not going onto a mountain top and meditating with the sunrise every morning. There is a concept of hisbodedus, of having some time off by yourself, just having time to think without the constant blaring of this world with all our beeps and tweets and chirps and who knows what, right? But holiness is not cutting ourselves off from society. Holiness is being involved in this world and uplifting it and bringing it up. Mesilat Yesharim, the Ramchal, in his book, Mesilat Yesharim, the Path of the Just, so he goes through the different levels that a person is meant to climb. And one of the top levels is Kedusha. And that, he says, is where one transforms all of the physicality into holiness, into goodness. When I'm eating to give myself the strength to serve God, to take care of my family, to be healthy, so I'll be able to do mitzvot. And that way, even the food that a person eats can be considered like a korban, like a sacrifice. It becomes holy, it becomes sanctified. So the Kedusha, from a Jewish point of view, is forming our day-to-day, the involvement that we have in this world, transforming that into holiness. And Ramchal in Derech Hashem put it very, very beautifully also. He asked the question, right? He presents that we are here in this world and there are choices either way, right? So we need to become more spiritualized and less physicalized and less materialized. But he says, but we're in a physical body, in a physical world that needs to eat, needs to drink, needs to sleep, needs to earn money in order to be able to function, right? So therefore, the chips are all against us over here. How are we supposed to do it? And he uses the term hashbalato, hagba'ato. It is this lowliness that is that is the tool towards our lifting ourselves up. When we utilize all of these things for a lofty purpose, that is kedusha, that is transformative, that takes the mundane and it makes it the regular and makes it into something that is holy, that is eternal. And therefore, the listing over here, right, mentions treating parents with respect, honoring parents, Shabbat, right, not having idols, but also on page 658, 659, it's talking about V'kutz Rechem, verse 9, when you harvest, you can't completely harvest your field, leave the corner there for the poor. And when you're leket, when you're actually, and even that part which you are harvesting, if there are some that are left unharvested, leave it for the poor, and then to deal honestly with others, right? Don't withhold wages. Then we have the pasuk that we mentioned earlier. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Hashem. Love your fellow as yourself, I am Hashem. But very, very interestingly, Ramban has a beautiful progression over here. And Ramban works through, let's see the psukim leading up to that. He starts with verse 17, but I actually want to start with verse 16, because something jumped out at me last night. So we're on page 660, Perek Yud Tet, verse 16, Tet Zayin. The pasuk says, Lo telech rachil ba'amecha. Don't go as a tale bearer. English, a gossip monger. That's a great word, isn't it? A gossip monger, right? Don't go as a tale bearer, as a gossip monger. Ba'amecha, amongst your people. Okay? Rechilos, now we're familiar with, there's three categories actually. There's Lashon Hara, there's Motzi Shemra, and there is Rechilos. Lashon Hara is true derogatory information about someone else. The usual response when you say to someone, I think that might be Lashon Hara, the usual response is, but it's true, right? Yes, exactly. Therefore, since it is true, it is properly categorized as Lashon Hara, speaking true derogatory information about someone else. Now, in situations where you are protecting the other person, so then the latter half of the pasuk applies. Lo ta'amod al dam rayecha. Don't stand idly by the blood of your friend. If it is a business partner and you know that this person has engaged in very, very shady business practices and his previous partners have gone down in ruin, then don't stand by the blood of your friend. Let this person know, if you're going into business, you want to check into the background and see what has happened in the past, and therefore take proper, make sure that it is structured in a way that'll be beneficial, that it won't be harmful. So again, one category is don't go lashon hara. Motzi shemra is a second category. That is motzi. I am bringing out, I am creating this bad name. That's speaking non-true derogatory information about others. A rachil, it's not derogatory. I haven't said anything derogatory at all, but I'm going around telling tales, and that often will lead to problems. Meaning, let's say, example I used to give when I was teaching in high school. Someone just got called into the principal's office, right? And is being raked over the coals by the principal. And I mentioned to someone, oh, about a half hour, I saw Bob walking out of the principal's office. Is there anything derogatory about Bob walking out of the principal's office? Not at all. But connections will be made that who got Dave in trouble with the principal? Oh, must be Bob is the one who squealed. Bob was walking out of the principal's office, right? So, in general, and I've stumbled with this a number of times, if it's not your story, you don't have to tell it. Right? You don't need to be telling other people's stories to others. You want to tell your story? Tell your story. But don't go telling about others to someone else. Again, lo tamar al dam reyecha. But if it's for a benefit of a person, right? This is in general, right? If someone is in physical pain or even danger of death, you can't stand idly by. you've got to get in there and try to help them. Also, emotional health. You have to do your best. You have to do your best to help people. The next pasuk, though, Yud Zayin, is Lotisna et achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother bilvavecha, in your heart. Now, if I were to ask you, are you allowed to hate your brother? Are you allowed to hate someone? Well, the pasuk really qualifies this. Lo tisnet achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate him where? In your heart. Meaning, rather, what should you do? Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. Right? When we keep something in our heart, we often think, okay, it won't come out. Right? And I'll smile. Hi, how are you? Oh, everything's great. Everything. Inside, I hate this guy. I hate this guy. All right, through my smiling, gritted teeth. But I'm good. I'm good. Oh, so good to see you. How are you? Right? But inside, I'm not feeling that at all. I'm feeling enmity, animosity, even hatred inside. So the pasuk says, Ramban explains, don't hate your brother in your heart. Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. What should you do? Give her proof. Speak to him. Speak to her. V'lo tisa alav chet. Don't carry a sin. Meaning, right? Either don't carry the sin of carrying in your heart, speak to the person. Very often it might have been a misunderstanding. Many times I've had situations where people thought I did something or misunderstood what I was doing. And because they didn't keep it in their hearts, or right, me to others, or others to me, if you talk it out, you realize, oh, there's more to the story. I had an incomplete view of the situation. Right? A number of times I was at a shiva house and the person was saying Kaddish, and the person saying Kaddish was not so familiar with the Kaddish, so he was going at a very slow pace. There was someone else who was also saying Kaddish, who correctly was joining in, but was going at a much faster pace that the Avel, the mourner, was having problems keeping up. So I turned to that person and I did this, meaning slow down. That's what I meant when I did this. Slow down. I later found out that that person was so upset with me because I told him to shush. I told him to be quiet. When he was saying Kaddish for his mother, for his father, for whoever he was saying Kaddish for. To me, this meant slow down. The guy's trying to say Kaddish. He can't keep up with you. He got very insulted. Shush. Thankfully, someone let me know this person was upset with me. And I spoke to him. And I was able to clarify it, right? To explain. And it was okay after that, right? But if you keep it in your heart, you're not giving the person the opportunity to right the ship, to explain. Because very often we have a very, very narrow view of a situation, and there's always a lot more to it than we realize. It doesn't mean every single time you're going to be able to, oh, my mistake, great, and hug and walk away, right? You might still not be happy. Maybe he doesn't have a good explanation. But you have to give, right? When you keep it inside, right, then it just eats away at you, right? It just erodes you inside when you are carrying that around. And therefore you can't keep it in your heart. Something that struck me last night is you're talking about a Rachel, a person tail-bearing, and the next pasuk is hating a brother in one's heart. To me, that seemed to be somewhat reminiscent of an event in our history, in our Torah story, right? We have Yosef, we have Joseph, who is Mevi Dibatam Ra'ah El Avihem. He would see things that the brothers would do, misunderstand it, but was a Telech Rachil, but went and told his father, based on his misunderstanding. And this, of course, led to tremendous animosity on the part of the brothers. So Yosef, to a certain degree, went, as the pasuk says, he brought dibatam ra'ah to his father, bad things about him to the father. He was acting somewhat as a rachil, as the pasuk seems to say. He should have confronted the brothers instead of assuming what he assumed and telling father. The brothers, in turn, instead of hating Yosef, should have confronted him and discussed it with him. Yosef should have discussed it with them instead of before going to father. They could have clarified. If he did it and they're feeling animosity, they should have discussed it with Yosef. Hocheach tochiach damitecha. They should have rebuked him. He should have rebuked them for the wrongs that he perceived they were doing. They should have rebuked him for this dibatam ra'ah. But instead, everyone kept everything inside of their hearts. Verse 17 tells us, you should give rebuke. Talk it out with the person. V'lo tisa alav chet. Right? In a simple sense, right? And don't carry that chet, that animosity inside of you. But Rashi explains, lo tisa alav chet. When you do it, don't do it in a way that you will be carrying sin. Number one rule on rebuke, don't do it publicly. Don't do it publicly. This applies to our friends. This applies to our children. This applies to our children also, where parents have the job, the responsibility of disciplining, of guiding. You don't do it publicly. Rambam says clearly, you don't do it publicly, right? Do it in a way that, tochacha comes from the word lehochiach, to prove. You want to show the person the mistake that they made. Now, once you have the person's ego in mind, you have the person's honor in mind, and you've trampled on the person's honor, they can't hear what you have to say. They can't honestly listen and evaluate the points that you are making because you humiliated me. Right? You humiliate me, I automatically go into this defensive pose. Right? I got to protect myself. And in defensive pose, nothing's coming through. So one needs to be very careful to do it in a positive manner. Verse 18, Lo tikom v'lo titor b'nei amecha. Do not take revenge. Do not bear a grudge. And revenge, Rashi explains, classic revenge is, will you lend me the rake? No. Next day the guy comes to me, can I borrow your shovel? You didn't lend me your rake. I'm not going to lend you my shovel. That is the classic revenge. And lotitor is to harbor that animosity. Classic. Can I borrow your rake? No. I walk away. Next day he knocks on my door. Can I borrow your shovel? I'm not like you. Yes, I'm not I'm not the kind of guy who doesn't lend out their things. Rakes, for example. Yes, you want a shovel? Sure. Here's my shovel. But what does it mean? It means that I've kept it inside of me. If I have that anger in my heart, that animosity in my heart, it's not going to remain in my heart. It's going to fester. It's going to come out in some way. And therefore, don't try to contain it. And then the classic, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Hashem. Love your neighbor, your fellow, as yourself. Ani Hashem. I am Hashem. And this was the Kol HaTorah Kula. According to the Kli Yakar, actually, the entire Torah is based on two things. There are two main categories. Bein Adam l'chaveiro, between humankind to humankind. Bein Adam l'makom, between mankind, humankind, and God. So therefore we have the ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. That's humankind to human to human. Ani Hashem, that is human to God. There are those that explain the ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that includes both human to human and human to God. Ben Adam l'chaveiro, Ben Adam l'makom. Why is that? Because when I act properly, when I do my mitzvot, all types of mitzvot, what does that do? As Derech Hashem says, that brings God's presence closer to the world. That brings greater illumination, bracha, blessing into the world. So therefore, both my bein adam l'chaveiro and bein adam l'makom, between man and man and God, both of those increase the good that's in the world. But the classic question is, the ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love someone else the same way you love yourself, right? The example I always like to give, when I was teaching in high school, and I would show a group picture to the class, there would be this simultaneous shriek of every kid in the class saying, "Oh, I look terrible." Meaning, when there is a group picture, where do your eyes go immediately? How do I look? How did I come out? Right? We all focus on ourselves. How could we be told the ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Right? And there are many people who are not very good people. Right? I like to feel the vast majority of humanity are good people, but we've got some rotten ones out there. We've got some truly rotten ones out there. So how do we understand v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? What do you say, my friends? I stumped you all, huh? So a hint is what we said before. Remember when the person came to Hillel? He wanted to learn the entire Torah on one foot. Hillel paraphrased this and put it into very practical terms. Right? It's hard to tell me, love this person. I want you to love this person. I do, I don't. It's hard to be commanded to love a person. Hillel put it into very practical terms. Treat the person the way you would want to be treated. Right? You might not like the person. You might dislike the person. You might have an intense dislike for this person. But how would you want to be treated by someone else? The way that you would want to be treated by someone else, that's how you should treat that person. Rambam actually on this mitzvah says, speak nicely about the person. Be concerned for the other person's property the same way that you're concerned about your property and your honor. Be concerned about that person's property and that person's honor. He doesn't go into the nitty-gritty. Make sure you love that person. I might not love, I might not like, I might even dislike. But kamocha, like you. How would you want to be treated by another person? How would you like to be treated by a person who dislikes you? Because there's got to be someone out there who dislikes us. How would you want to be treated by a person who dislikes you? That's how you should treat this person that you might even dislike. So it's not getting into the feelings. It's getting into the practical application. Rav Dessler has an interesting point here. Then we'll see some other ideas on this. Rav Dessler says, when you do for a person, then you see yourself in that person. And therefore, he says, do for another person. If you don't really care for this person, do for that person. Give to that person. Up this sense of kinship. And then you'll be able to see positive aspects and actually start to like that person, because everyone loves themselves the most, but you see a part of you in that person. If we take it up to a little more of a heavenly realm, the ahavta l'reacha, love a person, kamocha, like yourself. Meaning, just like you are a creation of God, you are a child of God, and you know, right? We are all parents here, right? We know how much we care about our children, and how thankful we are when someone is kind or helpful to our children. Kamocha. You are a child of God. Kamocha. This person is also a child of God. So recognize who's looking out to see who's treating their child well. And just as a child of God, this is an important person. This is a human being. All humanity. Kamocha. Right? The similarities between us and everyone are incredibly, incredibly high. Right? Treat them as such. Another way of looking at it is kamocha. When we look ourselves in the mirror, what do we see? We see a person who's got some good qualities, who has some faults, but all in all, we see a good person in the mirror. No matter who we are, we see a good person in the mirror. One of the quotes from Yad Vashem that I saw years and years and years ago and shakes me to this day is a Nazi SS officer who worked in the camps, in the concentration, in the killing, in the murder camps, discussing how it's a bit of a challenge to do the work he does during the day, but still come home and be a good husband and be a good father, just to be a good guy, right? Such a person looks in the mirror and sees a good guy. We see a murderer. We see the lowest form of a human being. But even that person looks in the mirror and sees a good person. And thank God, all of us who are far, far, far above and beyond that, we look in the mirror and we see a good person, even though we know that there are some faults and some things that we do wrong and mess ups that we've made and things that we shouldn't have said to people. But we see a good person. Kamocha. Love your neighbor, kamocha. The same way that when you look in the mirror, you see a good person who makes some mistakes and said some things that shouldn't have been said and did something that shouldn't have been done. Kamocha. When you look at the person with their mistakes, with the things they shouldn't have said, what were they thinking when they said that to me? Right? What were they thinking when they did that? Kamocha. You see yourself in a positive manner, even with our inevitable slips. This person made one of their inevitable slips. Kamocha, like yourself. Understand that. Respect that. But all of that only works if that is based on a foundation of ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which is if we're being told to love someone else like yourself, then what must we do? We must love ourselves. We must view ourselves in a positive way. And very often, we have a tendency to tear ourselves apart. I'm this, I'm that, I should have done this, I should have done that. If we're being commanded to love someone else like ourselves, then the base, the foundation upon which that is built is we must see ourselves in a positive light. Not to ignore our faults, not to not try to improve and correct, but all in all, we have to have a positive view of ourselves. Right? The 10th commandment, lo tachmod, it doesn't say, don't be jealous, don't want what someone else has. It's not to want the person's house, spouse, servants, animals, car, house, right? Don't want to be someone else. Recognize the gift that the unique gift, right? Everyone has their own thumbprint, their own fingerprint. And that is meant to show us that is a physical manifestation of the idea that spiritually each and every one of us is absolutely unique, and there's no one else that can accomplish what we can accomplish. And therefore, you have to recognize your own self, not ignoring faults and not trying to correct faults, but all in all, we have to recognize that we are children of Hashem, and we need to have a positive view of ourselves, and only on that can we then build and be good, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and then have this love to others, and to become the type of person that we began with, of Kedoshim to you, recognizing that I'm carrying God inside of me. I must exude that. I must continue to lift myself up better and better and higher and higher. Okay, my friends, we will call it over here. Yesher koach, everybody. Good seeing you all. There will not be a lunch and learn this Thursday. I have a grandson's bris, Bez Hashem, in Florida Friday morning. So thank you very much. So I'll be flying out there and coming back before Shabbat. That is the plan. Okay. Good seeing everybody. Shalom, shalom. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.